August 9th, 1988, a date that hockey fans will never forget. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player of all time, is traded from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings. The news sends shockwaves through Canada and the entire hockey world. Gretzky, visibly emotional at the press conference, wipes away tears as he explains the move that would forever change the sport. "I promised Mess I wouldn't do this," he says, struggling to maintain his composure. Before this trade, Gretzky had built a hockey dynasty in Edmonton. The Oilers had won 4 Stanley Cups in 5 years between 1984 and 1988. The team was unstoppable, featuring not just Gretzky, but other future Hall of Famers like Mark Messier, Jari Kurri, Paul Coffey, and Grant Fuhr. They were young, dominant, and showed no signs of slowing down. The numbers Gretzky put up in Edmonton were simply unbelievable. In the 1981-82 season, he scored 92 goals and 212 points, records that still stand today and may never be broken. He won 8 consecutive Hart trophies as the NHL's most valuable player. His playmaking abilities were magical, his hockey sense unmatched, and his vision on the ice seemed almost supernatural. He didn't just play the game, he transformed it. But then came the trade. Oilers owner Peter Pocklington, facing financial difficulties, made the business decision that broke Canadian hearts. Gretzky, along with teammates Marty McSorley and Mike Krushelnyski, was sent to Los Angeles for players, draft picks, and $15 million in cash. It was such a momentous event that one Canadian politician demanded the government block the trade. Some fans burned Pocklington's image in effigy. The trade was so significant that it earned its own name in hockey lore, the trade. This moment changed the course of hockey history. Gretzky's move to Los Angeles sparked interest in hockey throughout the southern United States, regions where ice was something you put in drinks, not something you played sports on. The NHL expanded into new markets, TV deals grew larger, and the profile of the sport rose dramatically. But what if this pivotal moment never happened? What if Wayne Gretzky had remained an Edmonton Oiler for his entire career? How different would the hockey landscape look today? How many more championships might the Oilers have won? Would hockey have ever caught on in California and across the American Sunbelt? Would the NHL look completely different today? These questions form the heart of our exploration. The Gretzky trade wasn't just a player changing teams. It was a seismic shift that altered the trajectory of an entire sport. By examining what might have happened if Gretzky stayed in Edmonton, we can better understand just how profound the trade truly was. Had Gretzky remained in Edmonton, the hockey world would likely have witnessed the greatest dynasty in modern sports history continue its dominance. The Oilers had already won 4 Stanley Cups with Gretzky between 1984 and 1988. With their core still in its prime, they were perfectly positioned to win several more. Even without Gretzky, the 1989-90 Oilers managed to win another Stanley Cup, with Mark Messier leading the charge. This remarkable achievement underscores just how talented that Edmonton roster truly was. Now imagine that team still having Wayne Gretzky in the lineup. The Oilers would have been nearly unstoppable. The Calgary Flames, who won the Cup in 1989, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who began their own mini dynasty in 1991, would have faced a much steeper challenge with Gretzky still wearing Oilers blue and orange. The chemistry between Gretzky and his teammates was something special. His partnership with Jari Kurri was particularly magical. Kurri scored 474 goals in just 754 games with the Oilers, many of them assisted by Gretzky's perfect passes. This duo likely would have continued rewriting the record books. Meanwhile, Mark Messier, who emerged from Gretzky's shadow after the trade to become one of the greatest leaders in hockey history, might have played his entire career as Gretzky's right-hand man, rather than forging his own legacy. The psychological impact of keeping Gretzky cannot be overstated. The trade devastated the Edmonton fan base, and to some extent, the entire country of Canada. Players on the team were shocked and demoralized. Keeping Gretzky would have maintained team morale and preserved the mystique of the Oilers as an unbeatable force. The confidence that comes with having the sport's greatest player on your side is immeasurable. Financial realities likely would have changed too. While owner Peter Pocklington cited money troubles as a factor in the Gretzky trade, keeping Wayne might have forced different solutions. Perhaps new ownership would have stepped in earlier. The team might have secured a new arena deal sooner. The economic ripple effects of Gretzky's continued presence in Edmonton would have been substantial for both the franchise and the city. From a statistical perspective, Gretzky's numbers might have been even more staggering had he stayed in Edmonton, playing in the defensively minded Kings system, and later with St. Louis and New York. Gretzky's point production inevitably declined from his Edmonton peak. The Oilers' high-flying style perfectly complemented Gretzky's offensive genius. It's not unreasonable to imagine him approaching 3,000 career points, rather than retiring with 2,857, had he continued playing in Edmonton's system with familiar teammates. The Oilers' dynasty eventually crumbled after Gretzky left, with core players gradually departing through trades and free agency. Had the Great One stayed, Edmonton might have remained a prime destination for players. Perhaps free agents would have taken less money for the chance to play with Gretzky on a perennial contender. The team's competitive window could have stayed open much longer, potentially extending their dynasty well into the 1990s. One thing is clear: hockey history would look dramatically different. The Edmonton Oilers with Gretzky represented hockey at its most exciting and dominant. Without the trade, they might have become the greatest dynasty the sport has ever seen, eclipsing even the Montreal Canadiens teams of the 1950s and 1970s. The records they would have set might have stood unbroken for generations. Without Wayne Gretzky's arrival in 1988, the Los Angeles hockey landscape would look dramatically different today. Prior to the trade, the Kings were a struggling franchise with inconsistent performance and lukewarm fan support. They played in the Great Western Forum, often before thousands of empty seats, and were very much in the shadow of the city's more popular teams like the Lakers, Dodgers, and Raiders. The Kings had existed since 1967, but had never captured the imagination of Los Angeles. They had their moments. The Triple Crown line of Dave Taylor, Charlie Simmer, and Marcel Dion in the early 1980s provided excitement, but they remained a niche attraction in a crowded sports market. Hockey was seen as a foreign, cold-weather sport that didn't resonate with Southern California's culture. The Kings' purple and gold uniforms, deliberately styled after the Lakers to borrow some reflected glory, spoke volumes about their place in the local sports hierarchy. When Gretzky arrived, everything changed. Suddenly, the Forum was filled to capacity. Kings games became the hottest ticket in town, with Hollywood celebrities like John Candy, Tom Hanks, and Kurt Russell regularly attending games. The Kings changed their colors to silver and black, creating their own distinct identity. Without Gretzky, this transformation never happens. The Kings likely would have continued as a middle-tier franchise, possibly even becoming candidates for relocation as NHL expansion plans evolved. Kings owner Bruce McNall, who engineered the Gretzky trade, used the Great One to elevate the franchise's profile and value. Without Gretzky, McNall's ambitious plans for hockey in Los Angeles would have lacked their centerpiece. The Kings might have remained stagnant or even declined in value and relevance. McNall himself might not have become the influential NHL power broker he became in the early 1990s. Perhaps most significantly, the cool factor that Gretzky brought to hockey in California would never have materialized. Before Gretzky, youth hockey was barely existent in Southern California. Ice rinks were scarce, and few kids dreamed of becoming hockey players. After Gretzky's arrival, participation in youth hockey exploded. New rinks were built. Hockey equipment began appearing in local sporting goods stores. This grassroots growth would have been severely limited without the inspiration Gretzky provided. The Kings' on-ice performance would certainly have been different. Without Gretzky, they wouldn't have reached the Stanley Cup final in 1993, a run that further cemented hockey's place in the Los Angeles sports scene. That playoff success created a generation of Kings fans who might never have connected with the sport otherwise. The team might have continued their pattern of occasional playoff appearances with early exits, never building the fan base that would later support their eventual Stanley Cup victories in 2012 and 2014. The business of hockey in Los Angeles would have developed along a much different trajectory. Television ratings for Kings games spiked after Gretzky's arrival. Local media coverage expanded dramatically. Corporate sponsorships and luxury box sales increased. The economic foundation that eventually supported the construction of the Staples Center, now Crypto.com Arena, might never have been established without the Gretzky-led boost to hockey's profile in the region. Without the proven success of hockey in Los Angeles that Gretzky helped create, the NHL might have looked elsewhere for expansion expansion. The Anaheim Mighty Ducks, who joined the league in 1993 partly due to the hockey boom Gretzky sparked in Southern California, might never have existed. The entire California hockey ecosystem, which now includes 3 successful NHL franchises and has produced numerous NHL players, might have remained underdeveloped or entirely absent from the hockey landscape. The NHL's expansion strategy and national footprint would look remarkably different had Wayne Gretzky never moved to Los Angeles. The Gretzky effect played a crucial role in convincing NHL leadership that hockey could thrive in non-traditional warm-weather markets. Without this proof of concept, the NHL's expansion plans might have followed a much more conservative path, focused primarily on traditional hockey regions in the northern United States and Canada. Before Gretzky's arrival in Los Angeles, the NHL had dipped its toes into southern markets with teams in Atlanta and California, but with limited success. The California Golden Seals relocated to Cleveland, then merged with the Minnesota North Stars. The Atlanta Flames moved to Calgary. The Colorado Rockies became the New Jersey Devils. These early failures made the league hesitant about further southern expansion. Gretzky's ability to popularize hockey in Southern California changed this perception dramatically. The early 1990s saw the NHL expand into San Jose, Tampa Bay, Anaheim, Florida, and later into Dallas, Phoenix, Nashville, and beyond. Many of these expansions were directly influenced by the success story unfolding in Los Angeles. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, who took office in 1993, championed growth into new markets, but his vision was made possible by Gretzky's demonstrated ability to sell hockey in unexpected places. Without Gretzky in LA, Bettman might have faced much stronger resistance to his expansion strategy from team owners and hockey traditionalists. Television contracts, crucial to the league's financial health, would have developed differently as well. Gretzky's Hollywood presence helped the NHL secure better national TV deals in the United States. His celebrity status made hockey more marketable to American networks that had previously shown little interest in the sport. Without Gretzky bringing star power and a successful Los Angeles franchise, the NHL might have remained primarily on regional sports networks, limiting its revenue potential and national visibility. The delayed or diminished growth into southern markets would have had financial implications for the entire league. Expansion fees, which brought hundreds of millions of dollars into the NHL and enriched existing team owners, might have been significantly smaller. Without the demonstrated success of hockey in California, the NHL's total revenue, which grew substantially during the 1990s and 2000s, might have followed a much flatter trajectory. Player salaries would have been affected too. The expansion into new markets created more teams and therefore more jobs for players. Additionally, new lucrative television contracts and merchandising opportunities drove up league revenues, which in turn increased player salaries. The NHL salary cap, introduced after the 2004-05 lockout, is directly tied to hockey-related revenue. Without the expanded footprint that Gretzky helped pioneer, the economic picture for players would likely have been less favorable. Youth hockey development across America would have evolved differently as well. The explosion of youth hockey in California that followed Gretzky's arrival created a model that was repeated in other non-traditional markets. When teams arrived in places like Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Nashville, they invested in grassroots hockey development, building rinks, and supporting youth programs. This continental spread of hockey might have remained concentrated in traditional northern regions without the Gretzky-inspired blueprint for growing the game. Even the international growth of hockey could have been affected. Gretzky's celebrity status made him a global ambassador for the sport. His presence in Los Angeles, one of the world's entertainment capitals, gave hockey unprecedented international media exposure. This raised the profile of the NHL around the world and helped attract European and eventually Asian interest in the North American game. Without Gretzky in Los Angeles, hockey might have remained more regionally focused and less successful at attracting global talent and fans. The most recent NHL expansion teams, the Vegas Golden Knights and Seattle Kraken, might never have existed in this alternate timeline. The confident expansion into these non-traditional markets was built on decades of successful growth that traced its origins back to Gretzky's move to Los Angeles. Without that foundation, the NHL of today might look much more like the NHL of the early 1980s, a league centered primarily in the northeastern United States and Canada, with a much smaller national and international footprint. Wayne Gretzky's personal legacy would have followed a dramatically different path had he remained in Edmonton for his entire career. The narrative surrounding the Great One would have shifted from being hockey's greatest ambassador and global superstar to potentially being the cornerstone cornerstone of the greatest dynasty in sports history. The way fans, media, and history books remember Gretzky would be fundamentally altered. In terms of statistics and records, Gretzky might have achieved even more astounding numbers. His production declined somewhat after joining the Kings, partly due to changes in playing style, teammates, and his own advancing age. The Oilers' high-flying system was perfectly suited to Gretzky's offensive genius. Had he continued playing alongside familiar teammates like Jari Kurri and Mark Messier in that system, he might have maintained his extraordinary scoring pace longer. Records that seemed untouchable might have been even further out of reach. His career total of 2,857 points could have approached or even exceeded 3,000. The Stanley Cup count in Gretzky's trophy case would almost certainly be higher. After winning 4 cups with Edmonton, Gretzky never hoisted the trophy again, despite reaching the finals with Los Angeles in 1993. The Oilers won another cup without him in 1990, and it's reasonable to assume they would have been favorites for several more championships had their core remained intact with Gretzky at the center. Instead of being a 4-time champion, Gretzky might be remembered as a 7- or 8-time cup winner, placing him among the most decorated players in NHL history. Culturally, Gretzky's impact would have been more concentrated in Canada rather than spread across North America. In Edmonton, he was already a national icon, but his move to Los Angeles transformed him into an international celebrity. Without the Hollywood connection, Gretzky would have remained primarily a hockey superstar, rather than a crossover cultural figure who hosted Saturday Night Live, appeared in movies and commercials, and married actress Janet Jones in a wedding called A Canada's Royal Wedding. The business ventures that defined Gretzky's post-playing career might have taken different forms as well. His restaurant in Toronto, his winery in Ontario, and his clothing lines all benefited from his elevated profile following the Los Angeles years. His brief coaching stint with the Phoenix Coyotes might never have happened without his connections to the American Southwest established during his Los Angeles tenure. His role promoting hockey in non-traditional markets might have been significantly reduced. Gretzky's relationship with Canadian fans would have evolved differently too. While he remained beloved in Canada after the trade, there was also a sense of abandonment, particularly in Edmonton. His tearful departure press conference revealed the emotional toll the trade took on him, and there remained a lingering what-if question among Canadian hockey fans. Had he stayed, Gretzky might have achieved an even more mythical status in Canadian culture, perhaps becoming an even more central figure in the country's sporting identity. His post-playing involvement with Hockey Canada, including his role as executive director for the 2002 and 2006 Olympic teams, might have come earlier and been more extensive. Without his focus on growing the game in the United States, Gretzky might have concentrated more energy on Canadian hockey development. The gold medal he helped secure for Canada at the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympics, their first in 50 years, might have been just one of several international triumphs under his guidance. Interestingly, Gretzky's global influence on the sport might actually have been reduced without the Los Angeles chapter of his career. While he would have remained hockey's greatest player, his ability to attract attention to the sport from casual fans and international audiences was significantly amplified by his presence in a major American media market. The paradox of Gretzky's legacy is that staying in Edmonton might have made him an even greater sports figure within hockey circles, while potentially limiting his broader cultural impact. The manner in which Gretzky is remembered would be fundamentally different. Instead of being the player who took hockey to new markets and new heights of popularity in the United States, he might be remembered primarily as the centerpiece of hockey's greatest dynasty. His legacy would be more about sustained excellence in one place rather than transformative influence across the hockey world. The what-if questions would focus not on how many more cups Edmonton might have won, but on whether hockey could have ever broken through in Southern California and beyond without him. The decision to keep Gretzky in Edmonton would have created a domino effect throughout the NHL, altering the fortunes of numerous teams and the careers of many players. The hockey landscape of the 1990s and beyond would have developed along significantly different lines, with championship banners hanging in different arenas and hockey history rewritten in fundamental ways. The Los Angeles Kings would have been most directly affected. Without Gretzky, they likely would have continued as a middle-tier franchise throughout the 1990s. Players like Luc Robitaille and Rob Blake still would have developed into stars, but without the spotlight and leadership that Gretzky provided. The Kings' run to the 1993 Stanley Cup final, where they lost to Montreal, never would have happened. This means Patrick Roy's legendary playoff performance that year might be remembered differently, perhaps diminishing his legacy slightly. The St. Louis Blues and New York Rangers, who acquired Gretzky in the latter stages of his career, would have missed out on the brief but significant Gretzky chapters in their histories. For the Blues, Gretzky's half-season stint in 1996 was ultimately disappointing, but created tremendous excitement. For the Rangers, Gretzky's 3 seasons reunited him with former Edmonton teammate Mark Messier and gave New York fans a chance to see the sport's greatest player before his retirement in 1999. Neither of these storylines would exist in our alternate timeline. Speaking of Mark Messier, his career trajectory would have been dramatically different without Gretzky's departure from Edmonton. Messier emerged from Gretzky's shadow to become the undisputed leader of the Oilers, winning the Hart Trophy as league MVP and captaining Edmonton to another Stanley Cup in 1990. His subsequent trade to the New York Rangers led to his legendary status in New York after ending their 54-year Stanley Cup drought in 1994. With Gretzky still in Edmonton, Messier might never have developed into the iconic leader he became. He might have remained in Edmonton as Gretzky's lieutenant rather than forging his own legacy elsewhere. The New York Rangers' 1994 Stanley Cup victory represents another major branch point in our alternate timeline. With Messier potentially still in Edmonton, the Rangers might have extended their cup drought beyond 1994. The iconic images of Messier hoisting the cup at Madison Square Garden and his famous guarantee against the New Jersey Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals might never have entered hockey lore. Rangers fans might still be waiting for a championship that last came in 1940. The Edmonton Oilers' continued success with Gretzky would have directly impacted their division rivals. The Calgary Flames, who won their only Stanley Cup in 1989, might never have earned that championship with a Gretzky-led Oilers team still at full strength. The Winnipeg Jets and Vancouver Canucks would have faced an even more difficult path through the playoffs, with Edmonton remaining a powerhouse. These franchises might have made different personnel decisions, potentially altering their development for years to come. In the Eastern Conference, the Pittsburgh Penguins emerged as a powerhouse with back-to-back Stanley Cups in 1991 and 1992, led by Mario Lemieux. Had Edmonton remained dominant with Gretzky, the Penguins might have faced them in the Stanley Cup Finals, creating dream matchups between Gretzky and Lemieux that hockey fans were largely denied. The outcome of these hypothetical series would have significantly impacted how we remember both legendary players. The Detroit Red Wings, who built a dynasty in the late 1990s, might have faced stronger opposition from a continued Edmonton powerhouse. The Wings' back-to-back cups in 1997 and 1998 might have been more difficult to achieve, or might not have happened at all, if Edmonton had remained the team to beat. The careers of Detroit stars like Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, and Nicholas Lidstrom might be viewed somewhat differently as a result. Beyond specific teams, the development of young players across the league would have followed different paths. Players who grew up idolizing Gretzky in Los Angeles might have pursued different sports or developed different playing styles. The influence of seeing Gretzky play in person inspired countless young Californians to take up hockey, some of whom eventually reached the NHL. This generation of players might never have emerged without Gretzky's presence on the West Coast. Even the NHL's officiating and rules might have evolved differently. Gretzky's presence in a major American market helped highlight issues like obstruction and defensive tactics that limited offensive creativity. His voice carried significant weight in discussions about the game's direction. The rule changes that eventually came to the NHL after the 2004-05 lockout, designed to increase scoring and highlight skill, might have arrived sooner or in different forms had Gretzky remained the face of the sport in Canada, rather than becoming its ambassador to the United States. The ripple effects extend to the NHL draft as well. Different teams winning championships means different draft orders. Players like Joe Sakic, Jaromir Jagr, and Teemu Selanne might have been selected by different teams, altering their careers and the fortunes of franchises across the league. The entire complexion of the NHL from the 1990s onward would have been reshuffled in ways both subtle and profound. The 1988 trade that sent Wayne Gretzky from Edmonton to Los Angeles stands as perhaps the most pivotal moment in modern hockey history. Its significance extends far beyond a simple player transaction. It fundamentally altered the trajectory of the sport, reshaping its geographic footprint, its cultural relevance, and its commercial prospects in ways that continue to reverberate today. today. Looking back at this alternate timeline where Gretzky remained an Oiler allows us to fully appreciate just how transformative the trade truly was. Had Gretzky stayed in Edmonton, hockey's story would have remained more concentrated in its traditional heartlands. The Edmonton dynasty likely would have extended well into the 1990s, potentially establishing itself as the greatest in sports history. The record books would look different. The Stanley Cup would have found different homes. Players like Mark Messier might never have emerged from Gretzky's shadow to become the leaders and icons they ultimately became. The NHL's expansion into the American South and West would have proceeded much more cautiously, if at all. Without the proof of concept that Gretzky in Los Angeles provided, hockey might never have established strong footholds in California, Texas, Florida, and beyond. The league's growth from 21 teams in 1988 to 32 today might have been significantly slower and taken a different geographic pattern, perhaps focusing on Canadian markets like Quebec City and Hamilton, or northern U.S. cities with stronger hockey traditions. Television deals, corporate partnerships, and the overall business of hockey would have evolved along a different path. Without penetrating major U.S. markets and capturing casual American sports fans, the NHL's revenue growth might have been more modest. Player salaries might not have reached their current levels. The economics of the entire sport would have developed differently. For Gretzky himself, staying in Edmonton would have meant more Stanley Cups, possibly even more records, and an unbroken bond with the city and country that first embraced him. Yet, his impact on the sport might ironically have been smaller. By moving to Los Angeles, Gretzky transcended hockey in ways that might not have been possible had he remained in Edmonton. He became not just a hockey icon, but a cultural figure who introduced the sport to millions of new fans. The Gretzky trade represents a fascinating inflection point in sports history, a single decision that altered not just one career or one franchise, but an entire sport. It's a reminder that sports history, like all history, is not predetermined. It hangs on decisions, sometimes made for reasons that seemed important at the time, but take on much greater significance in retrospect. In the end, the trade gave us a different NHL than the one that might have existed, more expansive, more American, more diverse in its fan base, but perhaps less connected to its Canadian roots. It gave Edmonton fewer Stanley Cups, but spread the gospel of hockey to places where ice had previously been just something to put in drinks. It transformed Gretzky from a Canadian national treasure to an international ambassador for the sport. Was hockey better off because of the trade? The answer depends on perspective. Canadian hockey purists might prefer the alternate timeline, where the game remained more concentrated in its traditional markets, with Gretzky continuing to set records in Edmonton. American hockey fans, particularly those in non-traditional markets, benefited enormously from Gretzky's move south. The NHL as a business certainly grew faster and larger because of the trade. What's undeniable is that August 9th, 1988 was the day that hockey changed forever. A tearful press conference in Edmonton marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. In exploring what might have been had that day never happened, we gain a deeper appreciation for how a single trade, arguably the most important in sports history, reshaped the game in ways that no one, not even Gretzky himself, could have fully imagined.